Something should be coming on now. So Rob, look, thanks a lot for coming on the call. Really appreciate it. I know we met obviously at the Crypto Investor Show, and was kind of quite excited about talking to you in particular, just because I remember seeing Botchain on the agenda when we looked through the brochure, or not the brochure, the itinerary for the day. So it was good kind of hearing you on stage, because you had like the panel thing, didn't you?
Yes.
But it was even better when I got to speak to you face to face. I mean, how tall are you, by the way? You look like a bloody giant. You're like 7 foot.
I'm like 6'2", 6'3", depending on the shoes I'm wearing. But yeah.
Jesus Christ. Well, look, that's just one of the things that we remember sort of me and my brother were talking about. But yeah, just to give you a bit of context. So what we are, we're a group. We're a UK crypto group. We originally found each other through like an American Facebook group, which probably got about 70,000 of people in there at the moment. And then we've whittled down and found out that there was actually some UK people in there. So now we're part of a WhatsApp group, and we share information. So what we've basically done, there's a number of us that have brought cryptos over the years, over the last few months. We've invested in some ICOs. We kind of pull resources together at times. There's a few of us that are studying, so whether it be through understanding blockchain a bit more. I just started to do a Hyperledger introduction this morning, and understanding, new technology and the Internet of Things and all this other stuff. So we're kind of like a rounded group, and we've got our own different objectives, but our main thing is about investment. So education is obviously key, but we really want to understand what happens behind a lot of these ICOs. And I know your one's a little bit different, because you're not a spring chicken, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying you're not.
Yeah.
You're not. You're a seasoned character, so you've invested in a lot of different companies and stuff. But I just wanted to try and get an idea about who you are behind Botchain, because other than all the other ICOs we seem to see out there, they seem to have like a really good marketing strategy or marketing campaign. We never see what's actually behind. So it's good to put a face and kind of understand you a little bit more. So I mean, how did you kind of get into this? How did you get into Botchain?
Yeah, and I'm happy to send you, if you look at angelpodcast.com, which is Jason Calacanis's Angel Podcast, I'm actually one of the more recent interviewees on there, so you can hear a good story about that if you're interested. Okay. Yeah. But I'll also tell you, so I'm a former hardware engineer.
Okay.
And have been in a lot of interesting early technology. I was one of the very first bloggers back in 2003. When there weren't a lot of blogs in the world, I was one of the first people to sell a blog in 2008. I was very early in social media. Actually, on Reddit, I have username Rob, R-O-B.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. And then, I had various sort of business development and sales and engineering positions over the years, and one failed startup. And then I got to 2009, and I started a company called Backupify. And Backupify did backup and archiving for cloud computing applications like Google Apps and Salesforce and Office 365. And what we would do is we sold into large companies who were moving to the cloud, and for disaster recovery policy purposes or whatever needed that. So we had 9,000 customers, more than $10 million in revenue. We sold the company for over $100 million. Symantec was an investor. They're a publicly traded company.
Okay.
And so after that happened, I started, I went to work for the company that acquired us for a little while, and I ran all the marketing and business development for them. I launched Asia Pac, and then, it was a good learning experience, but I wasn't a good cultural fit, and so I left and started doing a lot of angel investing, and then started Tala, which is the parent company that's doing Botchain. Right. So in my angel investing, it's mostly been artificial intelligence focused. I've done about 48 investments now. I have a few blockchain companies in there as well. So I'm an equity investor in like Library, which is a very early token.
Yeah.
And then I'm a venture partner at Pillar, which is a VC firm in Boston that has doing a lot of blockchain related work. I bought a bunch of Bitcoin in 2014 as an experiment. Unfortunately, I also used most of it, like just trying things. So I bought a plane ticket and stuff like that, just to see what it was like. So I ended up with about $2,000 left, which is worth a lot now, and I'm glad I had it. But I wish I'd had several thousand more. And so then Tala was started in late 2015, and the idea was to go out and build digital workers that use natural language processing technology to do different types of tasks. And so, we started the company. We sell to large enterprises. We're still small. We'll do about $1 million in revenue this year, but my expectation is that jumps to 4 or 5 next year. So we're starting to hit that curve. And one of the things that we learned in the core business, well, 2 things really. Number one, enterprises are a little bit worried about AI, because when you have software today, it's primarily rules-based. And so if you interact with it on January 1st, and then you interact with it again on June 1st, you get the same outcome. Now, all these AI agents, all this AI software, it's becoming intelligent and adaptive, which means if you interact with it on June 1st and then January 1st, it may be different. Yeah. Now, the fact that it can change, what does that mean if this software is part of a compliance process, which is a big problem in enterprises? If it's part of an ISO standard, HIPAA here in the US, SOC 2 or anything like that, well, you have to have an audit of the software. Well, how do you audit the software and understand how it's changed, and was it ever out of compliance at some point, right, in something that it learned? And so that's one of the things, just one, that Botchain starts to deal with. The other thing that I'll say about my background is I also write one of the world's most popular newsletters on artificial intelligence. It's called Inside AI. It goes out every Sunday to about 25,000 people.
I looked at that earlier, actually.
Yeah, and so from the perspective, like, one of the reasons that we decided to do this is that there's a lot of scammy ICOs out there, and we felt like, wow, we have a parent company that's equity backed. Like, I am not the kind of person, number one, I've already made a fair amount of money in my career. I'm not interested in running off with anybody's money. And I think it would be hard for me to do. I have a very high public profile, right? And so, what I really want to do is I want to build something that is big and meaningful. And I believe that enterprise blockchains have been overlooked in favor of a lot of consumery stuff, because a lot of your early crypto investors, we're all consumers, so it's always easier for us to understand these consumer plays. Mm-hmm. And there's just not as many people that understand some of the things you can do in enterprises. But when you look at enterprises, the money that they spend on audit and compliance and safety and security and those kinds of things is tremendous, right? Because it's all about avoiding risk in your business.
Yeah.
So we tied into that. But the second thing that it does that's really interesting is, right now, any type of AI process, whether it's RPA, which is robotic process automation, if you're watching this and don't know that, or chatbots, or anything that you're using that's an AI agent, right now the identity of that agent is tied to the platform that it runs on.
Okay.
And this presents a problem, because as these permeate organizations, you don't have the homogeneity of platform that you would expect. So take something like Slack. There's very few companies where everybody uses Slack all the time for everything. And so if you want to deploy some kind of AI agent, and it sits across Slack but across other things, you have a much better and much more interesting deployment if the identity is connected to the AI rather than the platform. And the bot providers and the AI companies that we've talked to and signed as our early partners love this, because they're not relying on the platforms for all these things, right? There's a giant decentralized registry of sort of every AI agent that anybody can apply and put their AI agent on there, that works very much the way that digital certificates work for the web. So the way that I know I can go to a website because it's bought a certificate and it's been validated, and there's that little green bar that says HTTP is secure.
Yeah.
We're trying to provide that for bots through Botchain. And so those are the 2 main use cases. There are other things that we're targeting that'll be more, further out in 2019 and 2020. And these will be things like, how do you get bots to share skills and information? So if my bot learns something and I'm willing to make that an open skill in return for payment for that skill, can I do that through Botchain is something that we're working on.
Yeah.
And then if you look at a long time, like if you're sort of like a buy and hold, crypto person, and you're thinking like, wow, where could this go in 5, 10, 15 years? I believe that we will have a world where AI agents and bots have their own little microeconomy, where they're engaging in their own types of smart contracts, and they're doing a lot of interesting things without humans even involved. And I think that the groundwork that we're laying around identity and audit and skill sharing and all that can be the thing that drives Botcoin to be the currency for that world.
Okay.
So, what makes us successful? I think if we're sitting here in 10 years and there are billions of transactions a day across hundreds of millions of bots in Botchain and Botcoin, then I think we've done the work that we set out to do.
Are you finding that there are particular industries that are more receptive to Botchain?
Yeah, we definitely are. That's a great question. So we started with our early partners. We tried to go a little bit horizontal and pull in some different types of bots. And some different types of RPA companies and a couple of bot platforms. So in the companies that we've already signed as partners, if we rolled out Botchain to all of them, which we're in the process of doing, right? They reach 400 million end users, over 1 billion transactions a month, 50,000 end developers. Now we are starting to work with Anthony Habiev, who is our head of partnerships, is working on doing some vertical targeting. We see a little bit in finance, but we see a lot in healthcare, which is people want to go and they want to use various AI processes in healthcare. And that's what you really have to be careful about. Information that you disclose, being able to track down what happened to a process. We're also looking at some GDPR use cases, right, which is going to impact you guys.
Yeah.
This is the thing that's coming that says, hey, you have to record your processing activities. And so the way that you can think about the audit trail for Botchain is you have a small piece of code that you can insert in any bot that you build, and it issues constant receipts to the blockchain that are hashes of what was the state of the bot, what was it doing, and why, right? If you think about having different AI models and those AI models evolving over time, we can hash back to the state of the model so that you can prove that, this model in this version, this was the state it was in when it made this decision, which makes it easier to understand and identify that decision.
Okay, so it gives so basically an audit trail in that respect. So, if we're going on from there, because when I think about bots, I said it's only just recently I've kind of got into it when we spoke, and I do a lot of this, or involved in a lot of this digital transformation at my work. So that's where the interest is. What about the kind of rogue bots? The rogue, the ones that are kind of out there and then they end up saying and doing stuff that they're not supposed to. How do you kind of control those? Because
so it's an interesting question, right? One of the things that there are two things that are coming that we don't have in the white paper yet that we're thinking about. One is we have one of the core Solidity developers working on a set of smart contracts just for AI agents, and that hasn't been announced yet because it's not finalized. And second thing, we're looking at actual control provisions, not just audit provisions for these bots. So the idea would be, how do you rein in a rogue bot, or how do you make a bot sort of require some voting consensus that it can do a certain thing that might be outside of its scope, right? And we don't have a model for that yet, but it's something we're working on. But I will say, when you look at the advisors, we haven't announced this publicly yet, but one of the advisors that we have signed on as a technical advisor is a professor of computer science at the University of Louisville. His name is Roman Yampolsky, and Dr. Yampolsky is an AI safety expert, and he catalogs a database of public AI failures and problems, ideas where reinforcement learning went wrong and the bots learned the wrong things and did the wrong things. And so he is very excited about having a way to, for companies to be able to go back and audit the state and understand, what happened, and have those trails. Because what you don't want to happen, like the thing that we know just from watching the news, is that when companies do bad things, there's a lot of pressure to go and delete and hide and do whatever to the data that was related to that, right? Yeah. We see that all the time. And so one of the things that can happen with Botchain is you make that impossible because of the immutability of the blockchain, that you have the hash that ties back to that. And the second thing is this identity thing that we're doing, the decentralized identity, can also lead to a reputation score for bots over time with the number of positive interactions that it's had, and things like that, which means that you can learn, you can learn if a bot is good or bad or doing something rogue. And if something does start to go bad, you can very quickly realize, like, this doesn't have a good score. Like, I shouldn't interact with this bot, right? Its reputation is yellow, not green or whatever from a color coding perspective.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose at the moment, what is, you're at the private sale. And I understand you went through was it a SAF, is it called?
Yeah, Simple Agreement for Future Tokens, right. which is very popular in some circles. Okay,
so for the ICO, you need to raise how much? What's your kind of, whatever they call it, the hard cap or whatever they?
Yeah, our soft cap is 10, and we're almost there. So I feel good that we'll get across that. And then our hard cap is 40. We won't go above that.
Okay.
partially because we don't like. I think we could raise more. There's a lot of interest and demand, but I think when you think about these projects, number one, there's no sense in raising so much money that you could just never spend it, that you don't need. And then the second thing is, it's very important to me as an entrepreneur who has, made money for my partners multiple times, that I continue to do that for investors and partners. And, if you go out and you raise $200 million on a token that has $1 billion valuation market cap out of the gate, it's like, there's upside if it goes to 5 or 10 or 100 billion, but like, wow, how many get there, right? So I think you want to get, so our goal is like when our token starts trading and floating, my expectation is that the market cap, given the lockups on the team and everything else, the early tradable tokens are going to give it a market cap of, 30, 40, maybe $50 million, depending on the price. So I think there's a lot of room to have it run for a long time.
Okay. So, so what are you kind of looking at then? So when you get to, okay, you if we wanted to get in at this stage, and we're not obviously from the US, so I know there's restrictions being an accredited investor and all that sort of stuff, but if you're outside, what would be the process of going through? Is there a minimum that we could, that we can invest in Botchain at this point?
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the structure. So how does it normally work? We haven't taken a group in like this. You're one of only like three groups that we're talking. Do you invest through a single entity or a bunch of people individually?
No, it would just be through a single entity. So we would group the money together, depending on, if there was a minimum of, I don't know, £5,000 or 10,000, or whatever it is. The concept would be we group the money together. One person would send that ether over to you guys and do it that way. But that's normally at the private sale stage. So it kind of depends what the requirements, what the criteria is at your end.
Yeah. So the criteria for this tranche of the private sale is 25,000 US dollars, sort of equivalent. Okay. And I think.
What does that get you then? What kind of discount does that get you?
It's a 25% discount, or if you frame it as a bonus, a 33% bonus.
Okay.
We actually treat it as a discount on the price of the token rather than additional tokens.
Okay.
So that's the difference. But I think, I think sort of two things to note there. First of all, I would have to figure it out for the group. Like, I don't think it would be a problem, but I would just need to figure out the logistics of how we do it for an entity like that.
Right.
Okay. But I'm sure it's doable. And then secondly, we have some really good people in the deal so far. We have Galaxy Digital, who's, very, very big. Mike Novogratz's fund. They're becoming a merchant bank for crypto. We have the head trader at Circle, which is a really good guy. And then we have several sort of New York family offices that are doing really well. We have some good meetings set up. I have a meeting with Tim Draper in a week and a half, which I'm excited about.
Okay. So all right. You kind of threw me there then, because I kind of thought, if you're getting these people that are invested, right? They understand what you're trying to do with Botchain. Maybe not understand the whole AI and the bots so much. So how do you kind of grow the rest of the community? I know I've seen your Telegram group and stuff, but what's the kind of strategy behind developing that side of things?
So we've attacked it from a couple of perspectives, right? First, we've gone after a lot of the big leading sort of bot companies and bot platforms. Okay. And it's sort of getting them to start to seed the network. And we're in the process of, we'll be live with several of them by late April, early May.
Okay.
The software, again, compared to a lot of ICOs, we have real software and it's working on a test net and we're doing stuff with it, right? And of course, Tala will be a user as well. Okay. And then we're working with, I don't know if you saw that we wrote about our governance model, but our governance model is to move from sort of Tala controlling everything to a sort of fully democratic model over a period of 3 years by putting this board of directors in place over the token that is 9 people. And Tala has 1 seat, but the other ones are chosen for various reasons, which we listed. And those people will make decisions about the token and the network. And then eventually make themselves irrelevant, right? Because there's a lot to figure out about governance. So I wanted to give it some hand-holding and some time. I thought that was the best way to design it. And the other thing is, we have on staff and have had for a while now a full-time business development person going out and striking these partnerships.
Okay.
And then we will start to do some marketing for end customers around what Botchain can do and sort of like co-branding with our partners around that. So,
Okay.
So I think it'll be a pretty good big thing. And I think as we get, I think we're starting to ramp up press and everything. I think it'll be pretty well known.
Okay. You said that you're using Ethereum as the
Yes.
blockchain. Like, why is there a particular reason why you chose Ethereum over any of the other blockchains?
Yeah. So the main things that we looked at were Ethereum and Stellar, given the sort of state of the market. I think the problem with this, I don't know if Ethereum will suffice long term because of scalability and speed constraints. But at the moment, it's robust and secure compared to a lot of these blockchains. I mean, we don't want to introduce technical risk that we don't need into the business yet. Yeah. So we've looked at some other blockchains and projects, things like Hashgraph, Kadena, Algorand, some really cool stuff that's just not ready. And I felt like we need to get started and sort of validate the use cases and get things out there on the blockchain as it exists, but architecting in a way that we either may need to be cross-chain at some point, or we may have to move to a new blockchain. It depends on where Ethereum is going to go as an ecosystem.
Okay, so then you just change it. So let's just say, for instance, we didn't make the cut. Let's just say afterwards we have a chat, in our group, and we decide actually we need a little bit more time to think. So after your private sale, then you go to your pre-ICO.
Yep.
What does that look like? Is there what are the requirements for the pre-ICO?
So those requirements start and phase in from starting at $25,000 for 25% discount into $10,000 minimum, $5,000 minimum, and then $500 minimum, and then late early June there'll be no minimum.
Right. Okay. So the end of your ICO is going to be when?
Sometime in June.
Sometime in June. Okay. I mean, I suppose the one thing I've got, I had a chat with a guy. I probably shouldn't say the company, but they're in chain supply, like logistics, big, massive organization, and they were really worried that they wouldn't be able to compete with their competitors because they're worried about them adopting this new technology sooner than them and creating this nice user experience and stuff like that. So are you working with any established companies that you could talk about, or is that something that you would be able to name any companies that you're working with at the moment?
So if you look at, so we do have a public announcement that has listed some of them, right? The biggest one at this point is a company called Gupshup, Gupshup. They are a bot platform that allows people to build developers to build various types of bots for various end user purposes of all kinds. And they're very large. They're probably the largest platform like that out there. We are in talks with a bunch of, so like one of our advisors is a guy named Michael Maloney, and Michael was, up until recently, the blockchain CTO at Ernst & Young.
Okay.
And so we've been talking to his replacement about something. We don't have, so we're talking to PwC. You can actually see, if you look at our original press release, PricewaterhouseCoopers gave us a quote for the press release, which is pretty rare, I think, for an ICO. Yeah. Ernst & Young, and we're talking to IBM's RPA division. So those are the big companies that we're talking to, but do not have deals with yet. Those deals have moved slow, but we've been able to open doors and get in there because of, our reputation and different people on the team, and because of the use case. And then we're working with the Institute of Internal Auditors in the United States, has issued, as of December, has issued their guidance for AI-related audits of AI. Yeah. And we are in contact with the guy who wrote that report about trying to do something together as well.
Right. Okay. All right. A lot going on then. Where about you calling? Where about you at the moment? Where are you kind of?
I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. That's where we're based.
Right. Okay. But you done? We're due to actually speak to a guy called Lamar Wilson. I think you guys might have gone to the same uni or so, or whatever. When you're in Kentucky?
I was in Kentucky. Yeah, I don't remember Lamar, but does he know me? Did we go there together?
No, I just remember I looked on your LinkedIn and I saw Kentucky and I
Yeah.
thought, oh, you know, maybe there was a connection there, but
Yeah.
who knows? There's a lot of people right in
Yeah.
Kentucky now. So
50,000 students or something. So it's a lot.
yeah. But look, I really appreciate the time. We're kind of like buzzing at the moment because it's really good to get to speak to a real person, not not a bot, but also not having this this marketing all flashy bells and singing and all that sort of stuff. It's really nice to actually speak to a person, a competent person that has a good history. So what I did want to do is would it be possible to speak to you at a later date, maybe like at the end of the year or something, just to see where you're at? I mean, I'm personally interested in Botchain.
Sure. At the end of 2018, like December?
Yeah, just
Yeah. I mean, the ICO will be done by then, but
yeah, absolutely. No, it's just it's kind of like a before and after, So
okay, yeah, sure.
See how you're doing now, and then kind of to see, you've obviously got your roadmap and how you want to get there, but the milestones might change, right? And change in this space quite often.
Well, but I also think the ecosystem will take over a lot of this, right? I mean, we will drive our part forward, but we're already starting to engage in some open source developers and stuff like that. One of the things, so if you go back and watch, there's a very old video on This Week in Startups, which is Jason Calacanis' regular podcast from probably 2011 or 2012, where he interviews Chris Sacca. Both of them were investors in my last company, and they have a discussion about me and the company. And Chris says, Rob May writes the best investor updates that I have ever seen. And Jason goes, oh, I agree. I love reading them, whatever. And so I intend to start doing that for Botchain at some point. And I will write regularly about the state of the project, because I think that's important. And so, and I like communication. It helps me shape my own thoughts as well on what's going on.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I don't know if any of the guys have got any questions, but certainly we will catch up and let you know what we're planning to do.
Right. Yeah, and happy to hop on another call if it's helpful, or feel free to email me.
No, brilliant, fantastic. Thank you very much, Rob. You take care. And
all right, you too.
I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye.